Here we are going to be showing how you can integrate FileMaker with Gmail. And then basically what that means is we're going to be able to pull messages and their attachments and then also update them so that they are marked as read, archived, or moved to the trash after you import them. The first step you're going to have to do is authenticate with Google itself using OAuth 2.0. So if you just go to the developer console and if you haven't created a project already, go ahead and create a new one. Or if you have one, you can just use an existing and enable an API. And you'll basically just need to look for the Gmail API. And again, if it's not enabled yet, enable it now. And then go to the credentials sections. And I've done a couple of these with like Google Calendar and that sort of thing. So if you haven't created a OAuth 2.0 client ID yet, you'll need to create a new one of those, and then you'll have to go through the setting up of the OAuth consent screen and getting your credentials. Inside of here, you will need to make sure you have the redirect URI, at least one of them matching exactly what you put inside of this example file or your integration. It'll need, if it doesn't match exactly, you'll get an error message. So just make sure at least one of these is going to match exactly what you have inside of here. And then just copy the client ID and the client secret. You'll need to make sure that you keep the client secret so that other people don't see it, because that's essentially your password for this authentication process. So if somebody else grabs that, they can impersonate you. So if someone does see it, you can always reset the secret if you need to. I'll do that later. So what you'll need to do, you'll put the client ID in there and the secret inside of here, and then go ahead and click continue. Now, there is a known bug with Mac users. So once you try to log in, so you'll be logging in with the end user, the person you're trying to pull the emails from. So it doesn't have to match the account that you set up the API OAuth client ID and secret with. In fact, most likely when you go live with this sort of thing, put it into production, it's not going to be the same. But this portion of it, this is just for, okay, this is the end user saying that they are okay with whatever app you're using, so in this case FileMaker, being able to access their emails and make changes and whatnot. So we'll log into here. Now the bug that I've come across in the past is this screen doesn't show up. So if it doesn't show up for you, you can just tab, and it'll just say next or something like that in the button. If you hit the tab button, it'll go over to the next screen. For whatever reason, it doesn't always show up, and this seems to only have been a problem with Mac, but it doesn't always happen. As you see, it's working here. Earlier today, I was having it happen, so I'm not sure what that is, but it does happen, and you can get through it just by tabbing to the next field. So we go ahead and log in with our password. Oh, let's try that again. Okay. I've authenticated this before, but another thing that it'll say in here is basically saying that they'll have access to mail, being able to create, edit, and modify and delete. So we'll allow that, and by allowing it, that will give us an access token and a refresh token. Feel free to download this example file and get more into the scripting of exactly what's happening, so that way you can see what's happening and implement this in your own system. But once we have the access token, this is what we're going to use to be able to send requests to Gmail to either get back messages or if we need to make changes. But basically, this is our key that lets us communicate with Gmail and make changes to this user's account. The refresh token is something that we'll need every so often. The access token is going to expire, and so you have to use the refresh token in order to get a new access token. So I just go ahead and before I do any kind of scripting, at the very beginning of the script, I'll just refresh that token that access token just to make sure we don't have any kind of authentication errors later on. So I'm going to go ahead and let's download any emails after 8 o'clock today, and we'll go ahead and hit the download button. So we got a few emails, and what I want to mention is the process for getting the emails. There's multiple steps in this, and so the first thing you have to do is, instead of this script, this is basically what runs and pulls all the email information. But the first thing you're going to have to do in this section is we're going to get all of the messages. So we're just trying to list all the messages after a certain timestamp, which is this field that we had back here. And that will just give us the ID and the thread ID. The thread ID is if you have multiple emails in a thread, so you're replying to an email over and over and over again, all those will have the same thread ID, so you can actually combine them and keep them together inside of your system. So it just gives you the ID at that point. So then you're going to have to loop through those IDs and pull the actual message information. And that message information comes back as a large JSON chunk, and then you just have to loop through all the sections of that JSON to pull all the information out of it. If you're wanting to get the from, the to, and all those kind of high level information, and the subject, and then same thing for the message body. They give you a plain text version, and then they give you an HTML version. And sometimes it'll be multi-parts, which then you have to dive down deeper. So the JSON is pretty complex that you will need to really take a look at this script and just emulate it to be able to pull your information. So the third step that you would have to do is for attachments. It doesn't give you the attachment file itself in this call where it gives you the message information. It just gives you an attachment ID. So then once you get to an attachment, you then have to do another call that pulls the attachment information based on the attachment ID given. So you have to use the message ID that you're pulling it from, and then also you give it the attachment ID. And so once you get that, it'll pull it in. It'll be base64 URL encoded, which is a little bit different than the native FileMaker base64 encoded. You'll have to, it's pretty close to the same. There's only about 3 or 4 characters that are substituted to change it to be URL encoded. So you can actually use a custom function that we have in here just to convert it, so then FileMaker can easily base64 decode it into an actual file for you to put inside of a container. Then the last step that you may want to do is, if you do want to mark after you import, if you want to mark anything as unread or archive it, which essentially takes it out of the inbox, or if you want to move it to the trash, that is just all labels inside of the message itself. So if you want to say, like I said, if you want to move it to archived, basically, like I said, out of the inbox, you just have to remove the inbox label, which is all just inside of here, just JSON that you can set up. So again, just reference the code for any changes that you need, and then the final step is down here. Then the last thing I did want to mention is the images. If there is an inline image in the email, meaning the image is just embedded inside of the email itself, not just a pure attachment, you will need to, if you want that to show inside of FileMaker, you'll have to do a little bit of substitution in the HTML text that you get, because it has a direct link, a source pointing to an address, but once you're outside of Gmail, that link is broken. It doesn't work, And so what you have to end up doing is inside of the scripting, you have to first see if the attachment that you're grabbing is an inline attachment, and that's one of the it's a flag inside of the JSON that you can see. But if you know it's an inline, you then have to do a substitute on the HTML that they gave you, where basically you have to search for a certain set of text and then just replace it with a base64 representation encoded version of the attachment that you have, and that will allow you to have the image shown as HTML instead of your HTML. So if you see here, we have an HTML version and a text version, but this image we actually had to manipulate a little bit, or the HTML we had to manipulate a little bit after we pulled it in from Gmail so that we get the image to show in FileMaker the way that it's intended to look inside of Gmail. All right, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you out. Thank you.